cell locomotion. Cells in the body are not mobile. However, the cells which can move either by amoeboid, ciliary, or the flagellar movement. Mostly we divide it into amoeboid locomotion and the ciliary locomotion, and the flagellar locomotion simply follows the mechanism of the ciliary movement. We will be looking into the detailed mechanism of these two types of locomotion and also looking into the examples of the cells which exhibit these types of movements. So here you can see in this short video the amoeboid locomotion of a blood cell which is moving in order to digest this microbe, which is also visible. So this is a crawling like movement of an entire cell. For example, white blood cells exhibit this type of amoeboid locomotion. Fibroblasts may show this locomotion to move to the site of wound healing. Germinals of cells of the skin may also move to the site of wound for healing. Embryonic cells like ovum and sperms can move for fertilization. Cancer cells, this is an abnormal pathological example where they can move by amoeboid locomotion when they are metastasizing. So amoeboid locomotion stimulus is chemotaxis, and whenever there is a particular chemical mediator, it can make the cell move towards the site of that chemical material because of the polarized response of the cell and its cytoskeletal element. When we look into the details of the amoeboid locomotion and its mechanism, you can appreciate how the polarized response of the cell towards the source of chemotaxis will result in the movement of the cell towards that cell. So in front of you is an image showing the movement of a cell towards this direction by amoeboid locomotion. So what events are occurring? Number one, the first event is the protrusion of a pseudopodium, that is elongation of the cytoplasm towards the site of the stimulus or chemotaxis. So number one is this protrusion of pseudopodium. Number two, the protruded pseudopodium will have some receptor binding over here on the basal lamina or basement membrane or cell membrane, whatever you call it, to let this type of amoeboid locomotion. Number three, when the pseudopodium has elongated and fixated on a receptor, the end on its previous side, the rear end, it will be pulled forward. Continuous movement of the cell membrane, formation at the leading edge by the protrusion of pseudopodia, and resorption at the rear end will occur. Receptor proteins from inside of the exocytotic vesicle will keep on exposing to the cell membrane at this leading end, and receptors will be pulled away from ligands to insert in the endocytotic vesicles on the rear end. If you have taken the section on the vesicular transport, you can quickly appreciate what we are talking about over here. Like whenever there is endocytosis, a part of the cell membrane is pinched into this endocytotic vesicle and it carries those proteins which were actually the part of the cell membrane. So this is what is happening over here. The cell membrane is getting resorbed on the rear end because of continuous formation of the endocytotic vesicles over here, and the receptors being pulled into the vesicles, and these vesicles are fusing at the front or the leading end. And when this vesicle fuses with the cell membrane on the leading end, these receptor proteins now become the part of the cell membrane over here. So this is simply the recycling from the rear end to the leading end. So receptors keep on moving from the rear end to the leading end, and thus this is the interplay of provision of energy receptor attachment, actin filament contraction present in the ectoplasm and which was assembling in the protruded pseudopodium as well, thus providing the movement of cell from the rear end to the leading end. The pre-existing actin filaments in the ectoplasms, they rearrange and increase their assembly inside the leading pseudopodium when the amoeboid locomotion is occurring. So let us quickly recall what happens during the amoeboid locomotion. First of all, this is the cell. There is protrusion of a pseudopodium. Actin filaments will organize into it specifically. Number 2, it will bind to receptor. Number 3, the remainder of the cytoplasm will move forward. Number 4, there will be movement of the cell membrane from rear to the leading end, movement of the cell receptor from rear to the leading end via the endo and exocytotic receptors. And number 6, the whole cell will move forward and this will keep on happening again and again towards the site of chemotaxis until the cell has reached its destination. And this is also requiring energy and continuous attachment and detachment to the receptors, continuous reassembly of the actin filaments, continuous formation of endocytotic and the exocytotic vesicles. So first of all, how pseudopodia were formed? The answer is by the assembly and disassembly of the actin filament, which is a type of cytoskeletal protein. I'm particularly talking, this is microfilament. So in a treadmilling fashion, they keep on assembling and disassembling at the front and the rear. That was all about the mechanism of amoeboid locomotion, and the examples include, for example, white blood cells, fibroblasts, skin cells, and the embryonic cells. Second type of cellular locomotion is the ciliary locomotion. Before we talk about this, let's have a quick overview what cilia are. Basically, these are cellular projections inside the cell membrane. The cilia can be non-motile and primary cilia, which are present on each cell and act as the sensory antenna for cellular signaling, recognition, transduction, cell growth. Whereas what we are concerned right now is about the motile cilia, which are involved in the ciliary locomotion. For example, inside the respiratory airway upper respiratory airway is lined by the cilia, which helps in mucociliary clearance. Inside the fallopian tube is the ciliary covering, which helps in the movement of the ovum faster movement of the ovum towards the uterus. Also, the sperms exhibit flagellar movement of the sperms because of the microtubular assembly inside it, and the mechanism will be similar to the ciliary locomotion. Also, the inside of the ventricles of the brain has ciliary surface that helps in smooth flow of the CSF. There is a clinical correlation of polycystic kidney disease, which is seen in case of mutation or abnormal functioning of these non-motile or primary cilia. Whereas in case of abnormal functioning of the motile cilia, we will see the correlations in a while, including, for example, primary ciliary dyskinesia and Cartigner syndrome. So starting from the example of the cilia of the respiratory tract, if we look into the structure of the cilia, these are the projections from the cell which are covered by the cell membrane. Also, you can appreciate in this image, this is a ciliary projection and it is covered by the cell membrane, and it originates from the basal body, as you can appreciate over here. The assembly of these all microtubular structures inside the cilium plus the associated proteins and membrane, overall we call it the axoneme. It has microtubules plus cross-linked proteins. How many microtubules? It has a set of 11 microtubules, in which 9 are doublets on the periphery and 2 are single tubules in the center, and associated protein with it is dynein. Now, if you recall the cellular organelle session and recall the structure of the centromere, it also had the assembly of the 9 microtubular sets, but those were the triplets. 9 triplets of the microtubules were arranged to form the centrosome, whereas inside cilia there are 9 doublets, and there were no single separate 2 sets of microtubules in the centrosome, whereas it is present in the cilia. So 9 doublets plus 2 singlets, overall 10 microtubular sets, and also an associated DAS protein. Now, if you recall the lecture on the cytoskeleton, dynein is a molecular motor protein that has this sort of an arrangement, one side acting like feet for crawling along the microtubules and other specialized to hold the cargo. So this dynein protein is also associated with the microtubular structure inside the cilia. This is the magnified version. You can appreciate these microtubular doublets on the periphery, singlets in the center, and associated dynein proteins over here, as you can see. And overall, we call it exoneme. Now, how does this ciliary motion occur? This is a whip-like motion that occurs approximately in the respiratory tract 10 to 20 times per second. And it is having a rapid forward stroke every time it beats and a slow backward movement, which is passive. And this is going to be coordinated for it if it is required to be effective post-ciliary clearance. What is the mechanism of this ciliary motion? There is requirement of the functional exoneme. Again, it requires energy in the form of ATP and the availability of calcium and magnesium electrolytes. So, first of all, the electrochemical signal for the ciliary locomotion will be sensed by these 2 central tubules. So, they have a sensing action, and this will lead to activation of ATPase dynein arms. On activation of ATPase dynein arms, doublet tubules on the front edge of the cilium, they will slide outward towards the tip. It began with the sensing of the signal by the central tubules, led to the activation of ATPase dynein arms. Activation led to the movement of the front doublet tubules towards the tip of the cilium. Microtubules on the back edge, whereas remained stationary. And this coordinated movement on the front edge movement and backward stationary action along with activated dynein arms led to sliding of each doublet toward on the adjacent doublet. Dynein ATPase arm form each doublet tubule to the adjacent doublet tubules. Ultimate action would be bending if front tubules crawl outward while the back tubules remain stationary. The whole cilium will be bent forward like this, and all cilium moving forward, and this will be a rapid flow. To bend them back into their original configuration, no further active action would be taken. Rather, they will passively and slowly recoil by a backward stroke to their original position, as you can see over here. So, with this rapid stroke, there will be a significant mucociliary movement in the forward direction. But when they slowly passively recoil back, that will not lead to a significant mucociliary backward flow, ultimately resulting in a mucociliary clearance towards the site that was intended. Also, this rapid strokes keep on happening 10 to 20 times per second, ultimately leading to the clearance of the mucociliary by this mucociliary movement. So, here is the image showing the bending. This is the bending in the opposite direction towards the apex, and these forward tubules, these moved outward, whereas the backward tubules, these remain stationary, and all that happened after sensing the electrochemical signal, presence of calcium and magnesium, availability of ATP that led to activation of dynein arms, movement of the forward tubules, and stationary action of the backward tubules. The bending and stroking of the motile cilia and flagella are produced by dynein motor proteins, which slide the microtubule doublets over each other. As a result, doublets extend farther towards the tip on the side towards the bend. The cilium will bend towards the side at which the microtubules have bent outward. So, what helps in keeping this ciliary movements coordinated? That is exoneme, which helps in dynein arm activation all across. Now, the resembling cellular locomotion of flagellum, for example, that exhibited by the sperm. Now, flagella is much larger than the cilium, and instead of a quick whip-like action, it shows quasi-sinusoidal waves because of its larger size, and it has similar microtubular and exonemal arrangement as that of cilia inside. Now, the clinical correlation, primary ciliary dyskinesia, one of the manifestation of abnormal ciliary movement. If the ciliary movement is abnormal, that can lead to abnormal mucociliary excavator function in the respiratory tract, leading to airway obstruction, stasis of this mucus, which will act as a growth medium for the bacteria, leading to increased risk of infection. Now, the cilia are defective. These will not be defective alone in the respiratory tract, but also in the reproductive tract, leading to the loss of sperm motility, and that can result in infertility. Cartagena syndrome is having a combination of this primary ciliary dyskinesia leading to infertility as well as bronchiectasis, sinusitis, and another characteristic manifestation of Cartagena syndrome is situs inversus, in which all body organs are in their mirror image. For example, the apex of heart, rather than being on the left side, will be towards the right side, liver, spleen, and each and every organ would be in the mirror image of its original. So this combination is known as Cartagena syndrome. So that's all about the cellular locomotion. Thank you.